Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Wednesday's edition, and we're broadcasting from the beautiful state of Idaho with Andrew Crapuchettes as my guest today. And from Andrew, how are you today? Happy to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. I am doing great. Fall has actually reached Idaho. We had a very long and beautiful summer. But the leaves are starting to fall. We got a little dusting of snow the other day. And it's kind of fun. You know, we've got a fireplace and warmer jackets, and I like fall. It's kind of a fun, beautiful time here in Idaho.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I didn't know you were in Idaho, I would say you, based upon your new jacket there and your nice tan look, you're going to dinner in Palm Beach tonight. But I understand you've got a dinner in Coeur d'Alene with a VIP tonight. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Hey, let me get your reaction, Andrew. Obviously, the big news, everybody's talking about it, the recent debate performances, the political winds, how they're shifting. Cook Political Report, a nonpartisan group, they came out and are now projecting 25 House seats. Last time you and I talked, I was saying I thought it would be around 20. The more interesting thing, though, again, a little bit left-leaning, but sort of center-left, Larry Sabato, political science professor, University of Virginia, pretty accurate guy. Him and his team are basically now they're giving the Republicans the edge in the House. Andrew, give us your perspective because you've noticed some voting patterns changing. How are you seeing things right now, and what's the mood of the voting public?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are going to see this red wave. I don't think there's any way around that. And part of the reason I'm pointing at that is because, you know, it's the economy stupid, famously said. Inflation and crime are so right in front of someone. So if you have a theoretical, let's talk about the economy, but my job's the same, my bills are the same, maybe GDP's down, people don't feel that, right? That's not going to have that same visceral impact as, you know what, I can't afford those muffins because I just put gas in my car, right? That's going to produce a visceral response from people. And so I think that that's going to drive more change than any economics before. Like if .coms go out of business and people are largely unaffected by that, but they read about it in the news, they're like, oh yeah, that's terrible. Oh, I'm sorry for those people. But when you can't put food on the table for your family, that will drive you to make a change. And I think the Democrats realize this, that the economy is a train wreck and that they have produced it. And so one stat that I saw, which I thought was really interesting, and this is according to Brookings, is that in 2020 at this point, there were 17 debates of the 5 most competitive Senate races, 17 debates at this point. This year, there's only been 7. So from 17 down to 7. And I think part of that is Democrats are they're just trying to stay out of the limelight. They're just hoping to stay off the camera, out in front of a microphone, because anytime they talk, they're just going to make people mad. And so they're just trying to hope that the voters don't even think about it and just vote Democrat again. But I don't think that's going to happen. So we're seeing this type of thing happen all over the country. And then when those debates do happen, when Fetterman gets up and babbles in front of a microphone and everyone's like, he should not be in public office. You know, I saw one stat that people think that Oz won that debate by 84% thought that Oz won that debate, which honestly, I believe it. If you see any of the clips from that debate, Fetterman shouldn't necessarily be in office. I'm not sure he should have any job. And so, you know, we're going to see, I think voters are going to turn up. They're going to show up. There's one other interesting fact that I heard recently, Mark, is I was talking to a pollster in DC, and he was telling me, he said, it's really interesting that before the Biden, we'll call it the Hitler speech, remember where he had the red behind him and the Marines were there and the whole situation, right? Before that speech, he was getting very similar response rates from Republicans and Democrats. But then after that speech, after the Mar-a-Lago situation with the FBI, after all the stories they're hearing, he said, Republicans simply won't answer the phone anymore. Or as soon as they hear your pollster, they just hang up. And so he said he believes that the polls that we're seeing today are actually skewed to the left because there's more Democrats that are willing to have those conversations. Republicans don't know, are you a pollster or are you someone who's going to have the IRS raid me or the FBI? People don't trust the government anymore on the right. And so, but he said he does believe, and in the conversations he's had with people, that they still have anonymity at the polls. And so they're still going to vote their mind. They're still going to vote the way they want to, even if they're not answering the pollsters' questions. And so if that's true, and we're going to find out here in a couple of weeks, if that's true, then these polls are not even as right as reality. And I think that's going to be a really interesting trend and might just terrify some Democrats. You would hope that they would change their policy, that they would dial back that liberal rhetoric because they know they're going to lose. But it feels like they're leaning into it, right? Biden has, the transgender influencer at the White House. Like, that's not going to win you any votes in the left. You need to get a little more centrist. And that's what they usually do coming into elections. But this year, they've decided to just lean into their leftist policies that nobody even wants anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big turnoff to independent voters. They're not going to get any Republicans swinging over to vote Democrat with those policies. You mentioned Fetterman's performance last night. That was a complete train wreck. I mean, I saw part of it. I mean, he's incoherent. He flip-flops on his policies about fracking, what he used to believe, what he, quote, now believes, telling the audience good night right when the debate gets ready to start.
Yep.
I could go on. The man, he does not only does he not look like he's capable of holding office, we don't wish ill health upon anyone, but this stroke clearly has decreased his mental faculties to a point where, my God, between Joe Biden being limited and Fetterman being in the mental state he is, I mean, what were people thinking in Pennsylvania? I mean, how could anybody vote for Fetterman? I sound like Nancy Pelosi saying, I can't believe anyone would ever vote for a Republican. I mean, that's what she actually said. She's like, how could anyone ever vote for a Republican? Oh, my God, you that tone deaf. But I'm with you on this. I mean, I'm looking at some of these debates. Fetterman was really bad last night. I mean, it was embarrassingly bad.
It was. And I've stumbled over my words before in my life,
Sure.
right? So I have some sympathy for people. But I did see one person on Twitter said, Fetterman's wife and Jill Biden have this in common. They love power and they don't love their husband. They kind of put them out there like that to just let them wallow in their inability to put a sentence together. It's just not kind.
No, it's not. And I hope the people of Pennsylvania wake up. I mean, I saw some polling that says Oz jumped ahead. I don't know if I believe polling right afterward. There's still time to go, but boy, I got to tell you something. That has to be a momentum boost in Pennsylvania. And if you take what you're saying about the polling, and I happen to believe that, Andrew, I think that's correct. That could have a big effect in Georgia, no question about it, where I think Herschel Walker's pulled ahead. Has he pulled ahead enough to avert a runoff? Probably not, but I've said for weeks I thought that would end in a runoff because, between the non-Republican, non-Democrat running, they're going to siphon off some votes. But let me get back to what's going to happen in November. Almost every polling outfit has had the Republicans up in the what's called the generic ballot. That's a binary choice, Republican or Democrat.
Right.
There's no third parties. Republicans are up 2.4 in that. And again, if you apply your theory, I think they're up a lot more than 2.4. History has shown us that whenever Republicans are either -1 or winning, they do extremely well in those elections.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, we're going to find out here in a couple of weeks, and we're guessing here, but the data is pointing towards this. And I'm going to encourage people, don't go back to sleep. Don't think, oh, great, this is one. I don't need to worry about it. I saw one report that Fetterman raised $1 million 3 hours after the debate. He raised $1 million 3 hours after the debate. So there's still people who are holding on to this ideal that they want those leftist strategies. And where did that $1 million come from? Well, who knows? But the reality is people are still donating to these things. And so I would encourage people to continue to stay awake, continue to push on these things, continue to donate your time, and don't just vote on the poll at the polls in November, which I think is really, really important, but vote with your pocketbook, vote with your job. And I know we'll talk about this later, but when you are going to companies and spending money, you saw that Chase canceled a conservative foundation because they said, hey, we can't work with people like you. We need, as conservatives, to not just wake up at the polls, but wake up with where we're spending our money, where we're working. And if we vote in those ways, and you see people are, moving to red states when they vote in those ways, then we're continuing to take away power from the Democrats. So vote at the polls, vote with your dollars, vote with your job. And when you do those things, you really take away a lot of the power that Democrats have today.
And if you're able to donate to all these candidates who are in a very, very close race,
absolutely,
and it could be lots of them.
Yeah.
Joe Biden's approval rating came out of Reuters yesterday. He's 39%, so he's below that 40 number. And here's the real telltale sign, Andrew, and you touched on it a little bit earlier. Democrats are keeping Biden generally off the campaign trail.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's not campaigning in Nevada against Adam Laxalt. Laxalt, I saw a poll today, he's up 5. Now, I think that's aggressive. I think he's really maybe 2 or 3 points ahead. I saw a poll earlier today, Blake Masters and Kelly are tied now. Now, I watched a little bit of Sean Hannity's show last night. I thought Mike Lee was great. I thought Blake Masters was great. Adam Laxalt was great. I mean, these are people that we need in the Senate. And I saw really solid positions on all of them. And Biden doesn't want to go anywhere near candidates in Arizona, Nevada. I mean, he was out west. He had a chance to do it. And they said, no. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Keeping Biden away, Andrew?
Well, I mean, this is actually not uncommon. So if you look at the middle of the presidential terms, generally people are cautious about campaigning with a president, especially if you've got an approval rating that is 39%. I know I wouldn't want to campaign with someone who has an approval rating that low. And I mean, my real question is, who are those 39%? What are they thinking? Because really, the economy is a disaster. He fell asleep on national television. He's just not fit for the job right now, right? And I hate to say that about a man. It's like senior abuse. Seeing someone who is clearly over his head. It is sad. And unfortunately, the leader of the free world and can't stay awake on national television. I wouldn't want to campaign with him if I was on the campaign trail at all right now.
Yeah, no, I'm in your camp on that. And it's no surprise. And it's no surprise that these races, some races are really tightening. A couple that are not tightening are happening in Florida. I mean, Marco Rubio has gone out. He's probably, I know the polling says 10 to 11. I don't believe that. That's too high. He's going to end up winning Florida 5 or 6 points. Ron DeSantis, on the other hand, he's up 14. He may win by 14 or more. I mean, he's got a 55% approval rating in the state of Florida. And my question is, who are the 45 that don't approve of what he's doing?
Exactly.
I know there's hardcore Democrats everywhere. So, but anyhow, in Florida, it's not close. With Rubio leading, he'll end up winning. Like I said, I'm handicapping him maybe a 5-point win because he's running against a respectable opponent. Charlie Crist, the former governor, used to be a Republican, then an independent. Now he's a Democrat. He's really the sacrificial lamb to go up against DeSantis.
Oh, yeah.
That's just sort of how it is. But Andrew, the reason I brought up Florida, they caught the second guy who was involved in the vicious attack on Marco Rubio's volunteer staffer who was doing nothing more than canvassing. Canvassing is a polite way of saying knocking on doors for candidates.
Yep.
A lot of young people do this. It gets some exposure in politics. And to be brutally attacked. I mean, he's in the hospital with broken bones in his skull. I mean, contusions all over. And 2 animals basically attacked him. I mean, this for nothing more than being a Republican. I mean, that's really bad stuff there. And folks, we may have differences with Democrats. We've never, ever advocated this type of situation, any violence, period. The debate should be handled at the ballot box, not on against innocent people just campaigning for their candidate.
Yeah, no, and you saw Alex Stein. He was at University of Pennsylvania, and students are spitting on him because he's like, hey, I'd like to have an opinion. Am I allowed to have free speech as well? And basically no. And so, don't be confused that it is a fair fight out there. The Democrats, the left, are not comfortable with people who have a different opinion than them. And I think we've seen this in the work world where people believe this neutrality lie, like, oh, we can just have a neutral office. And the left use that as like, great, you go to neutral and then we'll keep taking it left on our way to trying to take all the power. And so they do not handle when someone disagrees with them. And I think what I love about Ron DeSantis, what he is doing is he's not shrill. He just holds the line. He is just gutsy. He says, look, this is the right thing. I'm going to stand up for the right thing. I'm going to be unapologetic about the right thing. And you can scream and laugh at me all you want. I don't care. And I think there's a lot of Republicans that could learn a great deal from this, right? I think that some of the old guard Republican are unwilling to hold the line in the same way that he is. And if the New York Times does a hit piece on an old guard Republican, they all scurry around, what am I going to do? Whereas if they do a hit piece on Ron DeSantis, he'd be like, okay, I'm going to keep doing my job. I'm going to keep doing the right thing for the citizens of Florida. I'm going to continue to be a blessing to this state. Do as many hit pieces as you want. I don't care. Because when you do that, when you don't scurry around and care a great deal, you are taking away the power of that mainstream liberal media. Because if you are unaffected by their story that 12 people are reading anyway, they really don't have the power to affect things anymore. And this is where I wish old guard Republicans would learn from the Ron DeSantis. Like, you want to win by 14 points in a state as a governor in one of the most populous states in the country. Well, you should do it by being a stud who's willing to stick with your guns, who's willing to be strong and brave and not kowtow to every little thing the media pushes your way. And I would love to see more Republicans doing that. If they want to win, they need to stop being weenies.
Yeah, no, and he's a prime example of that. But, I'm going to tell you, in the state right next to you in Washington State, bordering Idaho, a shocking development. Now, again, I don't know whether to believe this or not, but Tiffany Smiley, a political newcomer, going against Patty Murray, who's been in the Senate 30 years. Andrew, Democrats are having to throw money at Patty Murray.
Right.
They are nervous. Are they right to be nervous? It's the state right next to you, a deep blue state. Joe Biden won by 20 points. Is it possible that in 2 years, I mean, she's gone from being down 20 to recent polling had her down 4 to 5 points. Right. Is it possible, Andrew, that Tiffany Smiley could upset Patty Murray in Washington State, bluest of the blue?
Yeah, no, I struggle with optimism on that one. I think it's possible. I mean, we don't know how many people have taken a red pill this year, but I think when, it used to be a very theoretical debate, as I said earlier, it's a very theoretical debate. Is the economy doing well? Are the Democratic policies doing well or not? And you could debate this all day long, whether it's social issues or tax issues. But when you can't put food on the table for your family because you just put gas in your car, and it is clear that the Democrats are running the House and the Senate and the president's office, when they're running all of those things and the economy is a hot mess, and it's a hot mess that's you're reminded of every time you drive by a gas station, you look at those crazy numbers for how much it costs to fill up your gas tank. That is more powerful than any yard sign, than any billboard, any political sign. And so I think the Democrats, and the problem is, I don't think they actually know how economies work or how to fix it, because they're like, oh, well, let's forgive student debt. That'll fix inflation. No, that will make inflation worse. Do you even understand Econ 101? Right? So they don't even know how to fix the problem. And so I think the gas station price signs are the most powerful political signs anywhere, and they're everywhere. And so will Patty Murray lose? I sure hope so. I don't know if she will, but she should be terrified and hopefully change some of her policies based on the fact that she's this close to losing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that was brought up on Hannity's show last night. We was talking to Adam Laxalt. People, I'll say it, east of the Rockies, they don't realize, but on the West Coast, California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, I mean, gas in California is over $6 a gallon. In Nevada, it's over $6 a gallon. In Washington State, Oregon, we're not paying 4, we're paying 6 out here.
That's right.
Yeah, Idaho. I mean, how's your gas prices in Idaho right now?
I was looking at diesel, and it was, I was trying to fill my truck up, and it was $5.50 a gallon right now in Idaho. Okay. $5.50 a gallon. And I'm doing a big housing development. I know I've mentioned this before. Yeah. In my housing development right now, we are burning 1,000 gallons of diesel a day with the equipment that's out there, 1,000 gallons a day. And so when you go from the, less than $3 that it was when we started this development under the Trump administration to almost $6 a gallon, like that is a $3,000 a day cost on a development that is a direct connection to decisions coming out of the Biden administration, policies coming out of the Democrats. And what am I going to have to do? Well, I'm going to have to charge more for my houses, for my lots, for everything. So that cost ripples through the economy. The reality is 2 of the highest costs in any economy are labor and energy. Sure. And when energy is through the roof right now, not only is it cost a lot of money to put gas in your truck or your car, but those trucks that are bringing things from Amazon to your house, they're burning through a lot more fuel. And if you want a house at some point, well, we are burning through 1,000 gallons a day in our little small development here in Moscow, Idaho. And so that's just going to have huge impacts on the cost of living for everyone in America.
Yeah, no question about it. And as you mentioned, inflation and the economy, Andrew, are the dominant issues driving this election, not to the Democrats' fantasies of abortion and climate change. I mean,
no.
I mean, abortion is like number 5 on the list, and climate change is like 19 on a 15 list set of issues.
Yep.
And fortunately, I mean, people are waking up to this. I'll tell you someone who's really waking up to it too. We haven't mentioned his name yet, but I want to give him a little credit. Lee Zeldin in New York is taking it to Kathy Hochul.
Man,
he did a stellar debate performance. And while we talk about inflation in the economy, boy, in New York, that's the second issue. Crime is what they talk about in New York, and rightfully so. What are your impressions of Lee Zeldin? I mean, he's a young guy, early 40s. I mean, he's out there fighting the fight. And my goodness, you talk about a blue state. If Lee Zeldin can pull it off in New York, Andrew, we are looking at a massive red wave.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think, if you're a New Yorker, and you've seen all of the people leave who are like, you know what, I want freedom. I want less taxes. I want less crime. Crime is a massive driver of economies as well, right? We talked about energy. We talked about inflation. But Citadel leaving Chicago and going down to Miami, they gave 3 reasons. But the first one was taxes. But the second one was, well, my executives leaving the office, is what the CEO told the news. My executives leaving the office are getting knifed and mugged. And that's just not palatable for our very high-end hedge fund. Like, yeah, no kidding. Or anybody, whether you're a high-end hedge fund or just a guy who does welding. Nobody wants to be knifed and mugged. And when you have these policies that are encouraging homelessness, that are encouraging drug use, that are not supporting the police, like if you say, hey, let's defund the police, and then lo and behold, crime goes through the roof, do you think there's a connection? It's almost like a lot of the Democrats have lost this connection between, cause and effect. When you do this, this thing will happen over here, right? Yeah. And if you understand that, then you can be like, okay, so when I say defund the police, and I'm trying to be demoralizing to every policeman, and I talked to a policeman in Washington State, back to, my over in Seattle, and he says, I know that the city council does not have my back. If there's any situation in which there's a question of who's on the right and who's in the wrong, I know that the city council will side with the criminal and not with the policeman. Yeah. And because of that, I simply won't touch anyone, right? I was talking to a friend of mine in downtown Seattle, and they said the police will just stand there and watch someone get mugged, because if they intervene, they will probably lose their job and their pension, and they know the city council won't back them. Well, when you do that to the police force, you are going to have crime go through the roof, and you're going to have the most productive members of your city and your society say, you know what, I'm out. Good luck with this city. And so I love what the debate in New York. I watched a little bit of it last night. Extraordinary. Really impressed with his ability to put together arguments, to point out the real issue. Reminded me a little bit of DeSantis of like, look, I'm happy to just hit stuff right up the middle and articulate it well. And man, if we have more Republicans like that, and we have elections in Washington and New York or in Oregon that are actually under debate right now, man, this could be a fun time to be alive.
Well, it really will be. And I got to tell you, I'm going to give a Republican a lot of credit. Tim Scott, who's actually running for re-election from South Carolina, he was out campaigning with Mike Lee, Utah. He was out campaigning with Adam Laxalt in Nevada, and with Blake Masters, Arizona. I mean, it's just amazing to me how diverse the Republican Party is, how independents are looking at the Republican Party saying, these Democratic ideas, I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. And, and you know what? This is going to segue into perfectly in my last topic, which is right down your alley. People moving out of blue states into red states, and the effect. You got the red balloon sign in back of it. You founded the company.
Yeah.
Give some perspective, Andrew, because red balloon is literally at the center of what's happening now. And you advocated it early, spending your dollars. Let's expand that a little bit. Talk about red balloon. Talk about people moving and the freedom they get when they actually work with red balloon or get to a red state. Yeah,
absolutely. What we're seeing is people are tired. I feel like COVID was the great accelerator. But really, it woke up a lot of conservatives. I was talking to a gentleman this last week. He said he's sitting in a company meeting, and the CEO gets up and says, "You're all racist. You're a racist, and you're a racist. It's just a scale of 1 to 10, but you're all racist." And he said, you could just see all the heads in the room just be like, "Oh my word, you really want us to focus on sales quota or hitting our numbers or accomplishing goals when you're just going to insult and demoralize us without anything we can do about it." Right? You're just that person. That's the way it is. And he's like, so it was clearly the moment that I was willing to walk away from my 6-figure job and find something else. Now, the good news is on redballoon.work, we have employers with 6-figure jobs who are looking for people who want to just get back to work. And so I am talking to employers every day who are helping people move. There's my good friend, Paul, who runs Conservative Move, is an organization that helps people move from blue states to red states. We're seeing billions of dollars of taxable income leave New York and Illinois and California and move places where they can be free. There's this interesting stat in California where there's these young professionals, and these are people who are under 30, earning over $100,000 a year in the state of California. And most years leading up to this recent year, we were seeing maybe 40 to 100 of those people. So young professionals who are really bellwethers for what an economy is going to be in the future. Because if you have someone earning 6 figures under $30,000, under 30 years old, they're probably going to be a driver of your economy in the future. So you can really kind of look at these individuals as they're going to be the leading edge to the economy in the future. Over the last couple of years, California's lost, 50 to 100 a year. This last year, they lost thousands of those young, higher earning professionals who are looking for freedom in other states. And obviously Red Balloon's helping those people and others find freedom in the workplace. And that freedom is sometimes moving to a new economy. It's also sometimes just moving to a new business that actually allows you to live your values out loud, will respect your freedom. And it's just been extraordinary. It's been so fun for us to be able to facilitate that change. I talked to another employer a couple of weeks ago who said, every person I hire off Red Balloon is cleansing to my culture. I talked to Louder with Crowder. They called me up and said, hey, there's no one else that I would trust to help us fill our showrunner position than Red Balloon, because we don't want someone who's going to come in and, espouse their leftist political ideology or their woke ideology in the workplace. We want people who just want to show up and provide value and work and make us money, right? Who understand capitalism. Yeah. And the reality is today that those are the people who are looking for jobs on redballoon.work. So it's been really fun to help facilitate this, to get to know people who are growing this conservative economy, and it's blowing up all over the place. One poll from Gallup says that 60% of people are unhappy in their workplace today. And something like 16% are 19% are actually miserable in their workplace. And part of that is companies in America today spend $8 billion a year on DEI and unconscious bias training. $8 billion a year just on the training, let alone the productivity loss and the demoralization of their own workforce. And so this has got to change, because when you are putting all of these workers, millions of workers around the country, through this kind of training that's just tearing them down, not allowing them to live their values out loud, it's hard for them to be courageous in other parts of their life, in their communities, in their churches, in their families. And so Red Balloon wants to help these people find places where they can be free, where they can be courageous, and where that courage is actually encouraged. And so that's what we're doing today. We're pushing back against the $8 billion of DEI training. Intel committed $300 million to DEI training over 10 years. And we want people to be less miserable at work so that they can be brave and courageous in every other aspect of their life.
Hey, one question, Andrew, and I don't come from a blue company, or I don't know much about what blue employers do. So pardon my ignorance, but what does DEI stand for?
Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which those words in and of themselves are not necessarily a bad thing, but they have been weaponized. The pronouns have been weaponized, DEI and CRT. You know, we've heard about CRT in our schools. Yeah, critical race theory. We've heard about this in schools. It is absolutely being pushed in the corporations as well. I talked to a lady who was just going through CRT training in her big company, and she was told the American flag was a trigger for people on the left, and you're not allowed to pray anywhere in the corporation, and you're a racist.
You need to get out of that corporation.
Yeah, like she's like, why am I even here anymore? Right. And I want to remind Americans, if you're in a company today, you are making them more money than they are paying you. And so your labor is being used to make money for people who hate your worldview. It's time for a change, and that's what redballoon.work's here for.
Well, I got to tell you something. I don't promote it because it's you're on the show, Andrew. I love what Red Balloon is doing. I love the fact you're the CEO and the founder of that company. You've got your head and your heart in the right place. And folks, again, we're not promoting, but you know, when a guy like Andrew is talking about what he's seeing out there, he's right. I mean, don't do anything to help these blue corporations. Get with a red corporation, get in a red state, get out and vote and contribute to the candidates. And hopefully in 2 weeks, Andrew, so a lot of the prognostications that you and I are hopefully going to be optimistic about it will come to fruition. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation post-election. We're going to have a celebration here in our community. Hopefully that night when we see the red wave take a lot of our political candidates and put them in a position, and then hopefully they hold the line and do a great job.
Well, Andrew, thank you for joining me today. Your new digs in the studio look fantastic. Great talking to you as always. I look forward to speaking to you post-election. Maybe we can toast one together.
That'll be great. Talk to you soon.
Okay, Andrew, thanks a lot, folks. We'll be back tomorrow. Again, we cut through the media propaganda. We cut through that liberal focus group, whatever you want to call it. People are going red. The red wave is building. Get out, vote, and contribute. Thanks for viewing today. We'll see you tomorrow.